Well, hello and thank you for joining us today for our Tackling Your Document Scanning Project with Success webinar, which is part of our ongoing Embracing the Paperless Office series. We've got quite a few people on the webinar today, so I thought we'll just jump right in here and get right into the content. So the purpose of today's webinar is really to help compare the options of scanning your documents internally using your own resources or contracting it out to an outsourced solution provider. And by the end of this presentation, really we just want you to have a high level understanding of what's going to be required either way you go and what tools you can use to evaluate outside vendors. So let's start off with planning for your in-house document scanning project. So this is scanning your documents internally, buying the equipment and the resources to do so. So what are the key benefits of this type of solution? Well, for starters, is that you have the ability to collaborate and troubleshoot on documents right away. If you're scanning a large historical collection of documents, you're going to find the way that you filed them over time and how they've been organized and the form types that they're on have changed. And so when things change or the name of the form or the filing structures change, you can instantly work with the other team members in your office to look at, address, and work through those problems. Those people are right there, the resources that you can rely on. Of course, one big benefit is that the documents never actually leave your possession. They're always in your facility. They're there when you need them. You can go and pull them out of the queue if you need to refer to the paper documents. It's a very quick and easy way to get access to your documents without losing control. And finally, you get to utilize your existing staff. So we all know that in today's workforce, that finding and retaining top talent for any position can be a struggle and be a challenge. So at times, if you have highs and lows, peaks and valleys in your workflow, instead of having to lay off temporarily or permanently some great employees, you can reallocate those existing staff to your scanning project and maintain them in-house. So, how do we set up a production scanning environment? What does this workflow look like, or what does this work group or a scanning pod, as I often call them, look like? Well, it's really combined of three main elements: your preparation, your scanning, and the indexing and quality control phase. So at the prep station, this is everything we need to do to get your documents to a state that can be fed through an automatic document scanner. It's the most labor-intensive part of this project, and any small errors, mistakes, things like that that you may miss here are really going to jeopardize every one of your other steps and the productivity in the other steps. So it's really key to have good people in these areas, proper procedures and documentation on how to do it, and all the tools and resources to do it effectively. So what you're looking to do is remove things like staples, binders, paper clips, sticky notes, tape small documents down to larger documents, insert file separation sheets. And what we mean by these file separation sheets is typically like a barcoded document that will tell the scanner every time you see one of these, start a new file for me. So maybe a patient's changed, a client file's changed, a date, things like that. And the reason we do that is to help facilitate the scanning phase. So really the scan operator, the person running your document scanner, has one job, and it's just to keep that machine running as often as possible. You want to see paper feeding through there consistently. What you really want to avoid in this scenario is somebody who's taking one file at a time that might be like 10 or 15 pages, feeding it through, waiting for it to be complete, taking that off, putting it back into a file folder, putting it in the box, then turning it over and grabbing the next file. That's not an effective way to scan your documents, and if you're talking about a large collection of files, that's going to take a long time to get completed. What you're going to be doing is looking to feed the production capacity of whatever scanner you have. So if it holds 500 sheets, you want to keep 500 sheets in there, and you want to keep that running. And that's really why the prep phase is most important, and that's where those file break sheets come in. So that, most people don't have a 500-page file. But using those break sheets, we can feed the scanner effectively and let the software break down the files digitally into individual records. And once the scanning is completed, and then we move on to an indexing and QC phase. Now, indexing and QC can either be done as one single group or it can be spread out across two different individuals. It really depends on the level of QC you're looking to go into with this type of information. So we have some people who do a paper to image verification of every document that's scanned. So in that scenario, you typically want to have your own QC person. Some people say, we trust the scanning operators did a good job. We'll have our index operator kind of do a quick once through to make sure everything looks to be there and it's readable, and then we'll take it from there. And they'll usually combine those two. So in the indexing and QC phase, this is where the software breaks up the files based on those break sheets. They're going to index the records, so maybe a medical record number, a client number, a date of birth, a name, anything like that. Whatever is going to help you identify those records later in a digital format. That's what we're capturing here. And again, performing the quality control. So are the images legible? Did we miss any pages? Did we capture backsides? Is everything there and reproducible? So what about staffing requirements for these places in the scanning work group or the scanning pod? Well, prep, you're going to need about 2 employees to feed one production scanner. And that's just based on how much extra work is actually involved in the prep stage, how slow it goes handling all those pieces of paper, making sure you're doing it right, that usually one scanner can keep up with 2 prep operators. And again, depending on how in-depth you want to get with your quality control and your indexing, you can usually have one employee who's doing those activities to keep up with one scanner. So all in all, you're looking at 3 to 4 employees for this area. 5 if you want to break out indexing and QC. So what do you need? What are we going to need to invest in? What are we going to need to plan for? Well, first and foremost, definitely your scanning phase and your indexing and QC phase are going to need computers. And you can utilize existing machines around your office. However, this is one area I really suggest that you try not to cheap out or save money or cut corners on. You want to buy a top-of-the-line computer. Any of the scanning speeds are typically going to be rated at a really high-end computer, something like an Intel i7, something like that. And if you buy a computer that doesn't meet the recommended specs for your scanner, the issue you're going to have is that it could potentially slow down your scanning speed. So everything you've invested in to expedite the workflow of scanning documents can be affected if you don't have a great computer in place. That being said, you're also going to need a production level scanner. And when we talk about production level scanners, we're usually talking at starting at 90 pages per minute and moving up from there. You can get ones that go 120, 130, and so on. So depending on the amount of files you have, the type of paper you're working with, how quickly you want to run through that. But production scanners usually start at around a 90 page per minute mark. You're going to need capture software, and this is kind of where all the magic happens. The capture software, something like a SciGen or a Kofax product, will allow you to automatically break down those files based on those break sheets, and it will give you an interface to QC and index your documents. So this is where you can effectively go through and index and quality control and rescan your documents if needed. What we see a lot of people do, and it's one of those productivity killers, is that you're scanning, indexing, and QCing and all in one product that probably came bundled with your scanner. And it's not really the most efficient way to do it. So you're scanning one file at a time, and you're going up to File, Save As, giving the PDF a name, closing it down, doing your next file. Really slows down the entire process, where the capture software and the indexing software allows you to automate that. I grouped these next two together, and they're both tied around recruitment, HR, training issues. So you really want to make sure you have a formalized procedure manual and training guide. What you're typically going to find in document scanning activities is that these aren't really glamorous jobs. These aren't ones that people write home to their families to tell them about how they got the best gig in the world. It's very repetitive, and if you don't find the right type of people who like that repetitive work, you're going to have a lot of turnover. And when you have that turnover, you want to make sure that when you do bring in new people, you can get them up to speed quickly and effectively, and that's where these manuals and training guides come in. Again, we talked about staffing requirements. You're looking at 3 to 4, maybe even up to 5, depending on how you want to break out that QC. And that's per work group or scanning pod. So if you have an average production throughput of X per pod and you want to increase your production throughput, you want to get the job done quicker, it's adding more pods. So for every pod you add, you're looking at another 3 to 4 individuals. And finally, just your basic document preparation tools as well. So things like staple removers, unbinding machines, Surlocks machines, book cutters, things like that to prep your documents, get them ready to be scanned, and to help the scanners run efficiently. So by all means, this isn't a comprehensive list. This isn't absolutely everything you need, but this is a lot of the key things that people are going to need to get up and running and that are often overlooked or corners are cut on. So with that being said, let's look at the other side of the spectrum. So instead of you saying that, hey, we want to invest in all this technology and resources and people, that's not our core competency, that's not what we do. We want to outsource this to the professionals. So what are we going to look for in those professionals? Well, for starters, let's look at the benefits of partnering with somebody. One of the key ones is that typically you're going to see faster turnaround times. So like we talked about earlier, if you want to speed up your project timeline, you've got to add in more of those scanner pods. And those are a lot more people, a lot more equipment for each one you're going to add in. Well, people who do this professionally, people who do this as an outsourced service, have all those scanner pods and those people already in place. So they can just allocate more of what they already have to your resources, to your project. You're partnering with experience. So I'm sure there was things that we talked about in the previous slides that you're going to need to prepare and have ready that you'd never even thought of using in scanning procedures before. You never even thought about how to use things like break sheets or automatic file separation, for instance. But this is where you can partner with experience, people who've learned through years of working on applications just like this, and really you're investing part of this project into getting it done right and not having to learn and bring yourself up to speed on everything. And typically what you're going to see is a lower overall cost. So all this stuff that we're talking about, the computers, the scanners, the capture software, the training, all of that, the outsourced provider's already invested. It's already been paid for. It's already up, it's already operational, they know what they're doing. So what ends up happening is when you look at it and you take into thought all of the soft costs involved in doing it and hard costs at your end, it's typically going to be a lower overall cost to have it done externally. So if you're thinking of outsourcing and you want to figure out, well, how do I evaluate these different vendors? Well, here's a couple key ones. So we've gone out to Google, we've searched document scanning services, and now we want to figure out, okay, I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to call these people, and other than price, how do I evaluate them? Well, for starters, look at their experience and their longevity. How long have they been in business? What types of accounts have they worked with? Do they have experience in your industry? Things like that. Not saying that somebody who's only a 2-year-old company isn't going to do a good job, but there's obviously a lot more experience and growth and learning that's come from somebody who's been in the industry for 30, 40 years. So what's their capacity? And when we talk about capacity, we're looking at it in two different ways. So what's their maximum monthly capacity in terms of documents scanned, and what's their average monthly volumes? So the reason it's important to look at this is if you're approaching somebody with an opportunity for 5 million documents, and the most they can scan every month is 100,000 pages, well, either you're waiting a long time to do it, or you're waiting for them to ramp up, buying the equipment and add in these new pods, and there's going to be an extra cost to that. Conversely, if you're looking to get a project done for 5 million documents and that's their capacity, but on average they do 5 million documents, so they're at capacity every month, it could really push out your timeline because they've got to schedule you in for that. So if they already have committed volumes, then you've got to work around that as well. So what we typically look for is something in the neighborhood of, hey, we have the capacity for 6 million documents a month, but we average about 3, so there's a lot of extra room that we can add in new projects and get them done quickly. References. You don't hire a new employee without checking references, and you shouldn't invest in a project like this without checking on their references as well. So look for ones that are in the same industry, case studies, things like that, and ask the references the tough questions. Ask them, hey, if you could do this whole project with them over again, what do you feel that could have been done better or more efficiently? What type of equipment are they using? What's the age of the equipment? So again, scanner technology changes so rapidly. Every new model that comes out, and the models are usually refreshed every 2 to 3 years, have a lot better image quality, a lot better speeds, a lot better ability to detect double feeds in documents to make sure you're not missing things. So are they using equipment that's 10 years old? Are they using modern equipment? What's the age and condition of that equipment? What's their workflow process? So how do they go from the initial meeting with you to returning a hard drive with images or uploading them to the cloud for you? How does that process work? And does the scanning process look similar to the internal process we talked about earlier, where you have these different groups that all work together to feed the scanning system? What's their security look like? So what's their network infrastructure security look like? What's their physical security look like? Is it monitored by cameras? Is there an alarm system, bars on the window, all that kind of great stuff to make sure that your documents are secure while they're out with them in their possession? What's their pricing? And really what you should look for in any kind of pricing model for this is what we call bundled or all-inclusive pricing, which is essentially one price per image for all your scanning. And that includes pickup, delivery, preparation, scanning, indexing, quality control, everything that you need to do down to one price per image. And the reason that we really suggest that is that what you've seen in the past is when you go down to a line item for every service, so much for pickup, so much for prep, things like that, is that in the past there's been a lot of services that would either unintentionally or intentionally be underquoted. So things like preparation per hour. So they would say, well, we estimate it's going to take 10, but then at the end of the project you get a bill for 50 and say, well, we underestimated that. And so it leaves a lot of guesswork. You're almost writing a blank check to somebody at that point. And we really want to avoid that and just make it a nice, clear pricing matrix that's easy to follow, validate, and understand. And finally, you also want to just have your gut check, right? Am I comfortable with them? Have I done my due diligence? Do they seem like the best people to work with? Or are they the lowest quote, but just something doesn't seem right with them? This is your documents. They're private records for the most part. They're confidential. You need to have the confidence and security to say we picked the right vendor, even if that costs you a penny or two more. So before we wrap up, just a little bit about us. For over 40 years, we've been helping organizations, large and small, who are really just frustrated with service delays to their customers because of poor records retrieval speeds, who are unhappy with the amount of physical space in their office that are dedicated to storing paper files, and people who are looking for an improved way to collaborate among team members sharing information. We provide things such as document scanning services, document management software, microfilm, microfiche scanning services, workflow or office automation type solutions to route your paper processes electronically, and we also provide document scanning hardware and software. So when it comes to document management, document imaging, we really basically do it all. And that's one of the reasons we want to do this webinar today, because from the perspective of is it outsourced or is it done internally, really from a commercial standpoint, we don't have an opinion one way or we don't have a preference one way or the other. For you, it's picking the right solution for your application. We're here to work with you because we have solutions to do it internally, or we have solutions for you guys to outsource it as well. So last slide here, we just encourage everyone to keep in touch with us. You can visit our website at ltd.ca. We're on all the social media channels, so have a look for us on there. We got some great videos on our YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. And of course, up top you'll see the link to our all-new document ebook, the only document management guide you'll ever need, which goes over a lot of the content we talked about here today, as well as a lot of other details as well. So I really encourage anyone to check that out. Feel free to download it, and we're happy to help any way we can. So again, I wanted to thank everyone for their time today, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're always happy to help. Thanks again.